Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take some really fascinating source material, often stuff you've sent in, and we really try to dig into it, pull out the most interesting bits.
Yeah, find those nuggets of knowledge.
Exactly. And today we're diving headfirst into something pretty unique, a musical world unlike, well, anything else really. It's a completely fictional phenomenon known as Finnish Saunametal.
That's right. You shared this this incredibly creative piece, didn't you? Detailing a whole metal scene, but one that's deeply rooted in saunas, heat, and a very specific kind of sound. And just to be super clear for everyone listening, when we talk about the band Sunn O, we're pronouncing that simply as sauna, like the hot room.
Not sauna O or anything like that, just sauna.
Exactly. It's a subtle thing, but it kind of matters as we get into this this fictional history.
Absolutely. Because, you might associate other metal scenes with, well, certain notorious incidents, maybe, or specific guitar solos.
Sure, Norway had the church burnings, Sweden had the melodic death metal solos.
Right. But this source makes this brilliant point, quoting Jukka Kivikummun Metten, apparently from Sunn O, the band saying, Finland had the heat.
And that just perfectly sets the stage, doesn't it? It frames everything we're about to explore.
It really does.
So yeah, this isn't just about a couple of imaginary bands playing loud music. Our mission here is to understand, like, where did this bizarre idea come from? How did this fictional sound evolve? Who were the key players, the philosophy behind it all?
And the story has some surprising twists, too, including an unexpected revival later on.
Exactly. So yeah, get ready for a deep dive into a world where the sauna isn't just for relaxing, it's the very crucible of sound.
Okay, let's plunge in then. Where did this whole steamy saga theoretically begin? Our source points back to the early 1990s, rural Kainuu, Finland. And there was this feeling, apparently, of disillusionment. Maybe the cold orthodoxy of black metal felt a bit too rigid for some.
Well, and what's interesting is why they shifted. It wasn't just rebellion for rebellion's sake. The source suggests a pull towards something more intrinsically Finnish.
The sauna.
The sauna, exactly, which, in Finland isn't just a place to wash. They became these natural gathering spots after gigs, initially just for quiet reflection, maybe in the warmth.
But that quiet didn't last, did it? The source described this really gradual, almost accidental thing where guitars start showing up in the sauna.
Yeah, first just informal playing, messing around.
Then distortion pedals start appearing. And the screams weren't like for an audience, more like this raw, cathartic release within the heat itself.
It paints a picture of something really inward looking, doesn't it? Almost primal, like the usual rules of performance, just, well, they didn't apply there.
Yeah, the focus was internal. The sauna's wooden walls were the only witnesses, sort of. And out of this humid environment emerges this figure, Kari Heli-Piltola, also known as Hiilinen, the coal one.
Right, the forestry student who also happened to heat saunas. A very Finnish combo, as you said.
Totally.
Yeah.
And his one-man tape project, Hiilinen, is sort of pegged as the spark, the very beginning of Saunametal.
Yeah, our source really highlights his 1992 demo, Qs Musta, The Stove is Black. That's supposedly the first known release in this this imaginary genre.
In the recording process, it sounds almost mystical, just completely lo-fi.
Totally. Picture it. A lakeside smoke sauna, a simple boombox balanced somewhere. A wet towel draped over the microphone, presumably to stop it melting or something.
Or just to get that muffled sound.
Maybe. And then just this detuned baritone guitar drone. Just...
Q. What does that recording setup tell us, though, about the whole ethos of it?
Well, that's a great question. I think it really underlines that the environment wasn't just like a backdrop. It was shaping the sound actively.
Right.
This wasn't about getting a clean recording. It was about capturing a feeling, something raw, born right out of that sauna experience. The limitations became part of the sound.
And those tracks, 22 minutes long. Unbroken fuzz, punctuated only by the hiss of water on the stones, and these low moans. It creates such a specific atmosphere.
It really does. And, okay, Pios Musta didn't exactly conquer the charts.
Probably not, though.
But the source stresses how foundational it was. Passed around on tapes among traders and these sauna cultists.
Sauna cultists, love them.
Right. But it established the core sound.
Yeah.
These super long, doomy riffs, but thickened by the humidity, vocals almost buried under the hiss and the wood sounds. It was a rejection of precision.
In favor of ritual warmth.
Exactly. Ritual warmth. That's a good way to put it.
And the influences mentioned are fascinating, too. You've got sleep, but like submerged in bog water.
Uh-huh.
Skepticism, but without the coldness.
Right, replacing the chill with heat.
And Humpa, Finnish folk dance music, but totally drained of its joy.
Blah.
Plus that constant rhythm of water hitting the kiwas, the stove stones.
It's like all of these different things were just chucked into the sauna's heat and chemically changed into something new.
It's a powerful image, yeah. This shift from, burning churches in Norway to just steaming souls in Finland.
It speaks to a very different kind of intensity, doesn't it? More internal.
Absolutely. Which brings us nicely to the philosophy that supposedly grew up around Saunametal.
Yeah, the source contrasts it really well with other extreme metal. It wasn't fire and brimstone. It was more about heat, silence, repetition, this kind of unraveling of the self.
The sauna wasn't just a venue, it was a portal.
A portal, exactly. A place for transformation, not just performance, driven by the heat.
And this philosophy, it wasn't like someone wrote a manifesto, right? It just sort of emerged.
Organically, yeah. Through these repeated sessions, the sweat. The core ideas being like heat equals truth, stripping away the bullshit. Steam is the whisper of ancestors. Pretty poetic stuff.
And then there's the elk, this recurring figure.
The elk, described as a cosmological constant, like the shamanic figure knitting against entropy. It's such a weirdly specific and evocative image.
It really is. Quiet
Yeah.
resilience. And that connects to the scarves, apparently. Started maybe ironically, but they became these quasi-sacred items.
Yeah, traded, believed to absorb the sauna's essence, maybe even affect the music's tone. It gets pretty mystical.
The whole visual side shifted, too, away from typical metal stuff towards geothermal mysticism, using words like loyli, the spirit of the scheme.
And kiwas, the stove itself, as key symbols.
And that zine article from '95 with the motto, "In the sauna, all men are equal and equally doomed."
Fantastic line. Darkly funny, but captures that shared endurance in the heat.
And the key thing, you had to sweat for your sound.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about volume. The physical act was part of it.
Absolutely essential. Which brings us to the late 90s and the arrival of Sunn O.
And again, that's pronounced sauna.
Right, sauna. Described not just as a band, but almost a ritual movement disguised as doom metal. Hailing from Kumo, apparently.
And they were super mysterious, weren't they? No interviews, no proper live shows, no surnames.
Total secrecy. They claim the music wasn't composed, it was sweated into being.
I love that. Yeah. And their '98 debut, Sauna Smoker. What a statement piece.
Recorded live during a lunar eclipse in a lakeside smoke sauna. One single track, 88 minutes long.
Wow.
Exploring heat loss, cosmic insulation. It sounds intense.
And the only other sounds were the hiss of water on the stones and elk baying in the distance.
Apparently so. It sounds less like a typical album and more like, I don't know, some kind of deep meditation tape from hell.
And the release itself, only 111 copies on vinyl.
Packaged in actual birch bark, signed in sweat.
Signed in sweat, that's commitment. And side A was just a 22-minute excerpt.
Yeah, and side B was blank with instructions for silent reflection on moisture. It's just peak conceptual art almost.
Total commitment to the theme.
But despite that limited release, or maybe because of it, it became this underground legend, spread through bootlegs, hush reviews, built this global cult following. People were drawn to the sound and the ritual.
Which leads to the 2001 Sauna Inferno Festival. This sounds completely insane.
It does. Performing inside a mobile sauna made from old church pews, with the stones heated by subwoofers.
Subwoofer heated stones. How does that even work?
I have no idea. But they apparently played a 3-hour set, slow roasting the audience, and one moose.
Wait, one moose? Seriously?
That's what the source says, resulting in a transcendental sweat. Who knows about the moose, but the story stuck.
And that anecdote about the attendees smelling feedback in saunas years later?
Well,
classic.
It cemented their myth, didn't it?
Absolutely. And they weren't the only ones in this Loyly Doom scene, right?
No, the source mentions others. Loyly hang at this all-female drone choir.
Singing Steam into Being.
In total darkness, guided only by heat and the key of E-flat. Incredible concept.
The Termapiri, the Turf Doom guys, burying amps in peat bogs.
Yeah, for ultimate sub-bass. Live shows mistaken for earthquakes. Again, just wild.
And Kivijak to Stone and Moon, the duo in candlelit ice saunas.
Right. Blending ambient noise, throat singing, and melting ice. Bringing that cold element in, interestingly.
It paints this picture of a really specific but strangely diverse little scene, all centered on heat and the sauna.
Yeah. The source sums it up nicely. Saunametal was briefly a temperature, and sauna was the kiwas, the stove, at its heart.
But like any intense fire, it couldn't burn that hot forever, right? So it started to cool down.
Exactly. Around 2004, our source details this big split, the Kylmäwave schism.
Kylmäwave, cold wave.
Pretty much. Led by this Lapland ambient collective called Ailoli No Steam.
Okay, so their name says it all.
Completely. Their whole philosophy was the opposite of Saunametal. Heat is a lie.
Wow, so they saw the sauna as a trap, something that dulled the sound.
Precisely. They thought heat compromised sonic purity. Their debut album, J.I. Sula, The Ice Does Not Melt, was all glacial synths, broken tape loops, field recordings of ice cracking, new guitars, no vocals, just cold.
Stark contrast. And this inevitably led to a feud.
Oh yeah. A pretty intense one for such a small scene. Ailoli dropped a diss track. Hervey J. Kunale, The Elk Freezes Beneath the Moon.
A direct hit on Sunn O. Elk mythology.
Yeah.
Least cold.
Literally. And Sunn O's response was perfectly. Sunn O.
What did they do?
Released a cassette, Warmth Will Outlive You, inside a real half-knitted scarf soaked in birch oil.
Of course they did. What was on the tape?
One chord repeated endlessly over hiss and the sound of Loyally Hang It breathing, rumored to spontaneously combust in cold saunas.
That is just brilliant conceptual warfare.
Isn't it? And the online arguments. That infamous is loyally false forum thread apparently got so out of hand they banned the word steam.
Leading to ridiculous euphemisms, I bet.
Totally. It shows how deep that split went, thermodynamic and spiritual.
So beyond the schism, what else led to the decline by, say, 2010?
Practical stuff started creeping in, safety regulations venues banning actual heaters inside.
Yeah, you can see that happening.
Condensation wrecking gear. And apparently a rather unfortunate incident involving a ladle and an electrical socket.
Ouch. That sounds final.
Yeah. Plus, the wider doom metal scene was shifting towards more nihilistic minimalism. Saunametal's whole sweaty enthusiasm started to seem a bit out of step, anachronistic.
And then the symbolic blow, Kivikumu, the sauna,
My guitars.
just disappears.
Vanishes in Lapland. Rumors flew self-exile. Ascended into steam? Who knows? Became part of the myth.
And the band's response.
Just one cryptic sentence. The stove is empty. The scarf is long enough.
Chilling, in its own way. End of an era.
Felt like it. Then Decibel Finland ran the obituary, the last loyally. Declared it extinct.
And the parody band Vastapari didn't help. Steamageddon.
Probably hammered the final nail in, made it seem like a joke. Even a fancy wood-grain sauna smoker bootleg couldn't revive things. By 2012, yeah, it looks like Saunametal had just evaporated.
Gone up in steam.
Pretty much. But, you know, as the source says, even when the steam clears, the stones stay hot for a while.
Right. And in the early 2020s, whispers started again.
Exactly. Saunametal had become this legend, artifacts traded like relics, and then 2022, completely out of the blue, this viral TikTok.
The hashtag knitting doom one.
That's the one. Just grainy footage of some guy intensely knitting a scarf in a smoke sauna, doing these insane subharmonic throat screams.
It's the perfect storm of weirdness for the internet age.
Totally. And it just blew up. Suddenly, Bandcamp is flooded with people buying sauna smoker bootlegs. Discogs prices for original vinyl go through the roof.
A whole new generation discovers it, drawn to that primal sound.
Yeah, the repetition, the humid gravity of it all. And then Bog Riffzine, that old underground paper, relaunches in 2023 with an issue called The Scarves Return.
The ember glows again.
Fiercely. And then Record Store Day 2024, the truly unexpected happens.
In collaboration, Sunn O and Ailoli.
The Ultimate Enemies, a split LP box set called Lempo Kylmäwave Heat Cold. Apparently, just getting the special packaging became a quest for fans.
Wow. And Sonacol's side had added Sauna Crackle, recorded on cedarwood tape decks.
The level of detail. It's almost performance art in itself.
And Ailoli's side, still gold.
Oh yeah. Hill Jesus I Pala. Silence does not burn. Wind sounds, ice ambience, a buried scream. Stark. Frigid.
Critics called it the Loyally Reckoning, a reconciliation.
Seems like it. That Savvy Sauna and Feedback quote summed it up. Heat without complacency. Cold without cruelty. Like they'd found a balance.
The scarf and the silence entwined.
Beautifully put. And this led to the sauna shrine sessions.
Yeah, these tiny invite-only gigs back in restored smoke saunas. Super strict rules, no phones, scarves mandatory. Back to the roots.
Incredible. So what started as this quiet murmur came back as a full hymn of heat.
Against all odds.
And that Pakashenki quote from Ailoli in 2025. Loyally is what happens when silence meets the body and refuses to let go. Captures it perfectly.
So the scene now is small, weird, defiant.
Exactly. Maybe it never really died, just waited in the steam room.
Which brings us to this final amazing chapter, the Kyo's Accord.
Ah, yes. So end of 2024, apparently some, let's call it creative tension.
Between Sauna O, pronounced Sauna.
And Sunna, pronounced Sun.
Right. Over that second N in Sauna O.
It became a thing. Was it homage? Was it theft? Online forums went nuts.
So who steps in to mediate?
None other than G.C. Letisalo, described as a low-frequency diplomat and wizard of the Finnish underground.
Perfect. And where do they hold this summit?
Where else? A smoke sauna outside Pori.
Of course. Who was there?
Jussi, Stephen O'Malley from Sunn O, members of Lohi Henki and Kivikumu from Sunn O, plus a nameless Kanteli bard.
The Kanteli bard. It just keeps getting better.
Jussi opens proceedings talking about harmonization. O'Malley apparently deeply contemplates the meaning of the second N.
What was the official explanation?
Jussi's take. The second N represents mitosis and heat. A sonic echo born of steam.
That is profoundly strange and utterly perfect for this story.
Isn't it? Then Sunn O makes an offering. A humming scarf made of wool, actual fog, and cassette tape fragments.
Naturally. And O'Malley's verdict.
Let them drone, but let them drone slow. A blessing, essentially.
A drone accord.
Yeah.
And they ladle water together onto the stones.
As a sign of agreement. The Kyo's Accord itself was signed on birch bark with pine tar thumbprints, sealed with yarn around a cassette.
The details are just incredible. What were the terms?
O'Malley grants tonal legitimacy, Sunn O.
Yeah.
Agrees to notify Sunn O. And play a 5-minute opening drone if they ever play within 666 meters of each other.
666 meters. Amazing. And a collaborative EP.
Agreed upon to be recorded in a defunct backhouse. Still unreleased, according to the source, adds to the mystique.
And Jesse just vanishes afterwards.
Off to conjure more sonic weirdness, presumably. That savvy sauna and feedback quote about him conducting the whole thing, and a 7-hour riff being born that day. It's the perfect ending.
Wow. Okay. So emerging from that deep dive into the very heated, very fictional history of Finnish Saunametal, and that's sauna. What a journey.
It really is. From those completely unique origins in the sauna itself, the heat-based philosophy, through the schism, the apparent death, and then this wild resurgence.
It just screams dedication, doesn't it? The unique vision of these imaginary artists is strangely compelling.
It really is. Makes you think about the power of these tiny niche communities and how even the most unconventional art can endure, you know?
Yeah. It leaves you with that question the source poses. What heat, what intense interest or weird passion in your own life could unexpectedly lead somewhere profound?
Definitely something to mull over.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of this particular deep dive. We really hope you found it enlightening, maybe a bit steamy.
Hopefully in a good way.
Keep sending in your source material, please. We love digging into whatever weird and wonderful corners of knowledge you uncover. Until the next exploration.